This is part two of T.S. Eliot's Ariel Poems, which were written for Advent within the Christian liturgical year. There is the liturgy of the Mass. There's the broader high and low parts of the liturgical year, or the major and minor cycle. And within those, there are stories to be told. So it's a third level. The annual Mass, the bigger liturgical year, and then the stories themselves. And what Eliot is doing, he's tapping in to significant stories within that larger liturgical narrative epic itself. So the second in the Ariel Poems is a song for Simeon. The first, as I mentioned, was The Journey of the Magi, which takes us into the classical world, and those within the classical world longing for something more, something deeper, and the wise people being drawn to the invitation offered to them, but yet the struggle of that. Now, the song for Simeon takes us into the Jewish world itself, and so Eliot is moving now from the classical way of being, the Magi, not only the Western classical, but a broader cosmopolitan classical. Now we're being grounded in the Jewish story, and Simeon's an old man. Eliot reflects he's probably about 80. He's lived a life with integrity. He's tried to live his Jewish faith with the best standards, but his life is coming to an end. He's in his autumn season, and yet he is being drawn also, in this case, to the temple where the young child Jesus is there. But again, this one starts off the winter. And it's interesting that Christmas in the Middle East is a colder time of year. It's interesting, and we're in the midst of this Israeli-Palestinian crisis. You get many of the Palestinians in Gaza at this point. They're recognizing also only so acutely this cold time of the year, which is much brutal than the normal warmth of the area. And so what Eliot is doing in the Song of Simeon, as in the Journey of the Magi, talking about the calling is one thing, the invitation to the place of insight, of enlightenment, is one thing, and yet on the other hand, the journey to living into that, it's not always easy. In fact, in this case, the weather conditions are not the best. The people you meet are not the easiest. And the story goes on, and yet being faithful to the journey in the midst of the doubts that are part of it. So in the Song of Simeon, you get the first part very much describing he's aging, he's in his autumn season, the weather is not the best, but he reflects on his life. And people in their autumn season often looking back saying, well, how did I live my life in the spring season, the summer season, now entering the autumn season? His life within the Jewish heritage has been faithful. He's lived up to the best of the Torah, the standards, kindness to the foreigner, the stranger, and yet he senses something is amiss. Things are out of joint. The future is not going to be kind, and he both looks in the past, but he's looking in the future, and he says, grant us your peace. So what does it mean to live in peace in the midst of chaos, midst of war, of unpredictability, the vision given, and yet the hard reality often is in contradiction to the vision lived. So Simeon is going back and forth constantly between, and it's done 3 times, grant us, so it's us, not me, a peace. As he reflects on his journey, he reflects on the future because he sees almost an apocalyptic future coming. He's there for the Christ child, but he knows the Christ child is not going to bring utopia in immediately. It's going to be very much an experience for not only his children, but his children's children, of war, of famine, and disease. And then the second part again is grant us your peace. So how does one live both in a state of peace, in the midst of seeing the future, which is going to be apocalyptic, but the present, which also augurs the future? And so Simeon is aware of this. And he talks about when he sees the infant, let the infant, the still unspeaking and unspoken word, which is very important for Eliot. He often refers to the unspeaking, the unspoken word, which is there, it's hidden, it's not known, but if we have ears to hear, if our soul is attentive, then we will hear the unspoken word. And Simeon has heard that unspoken word. This is why he goes to the temple when Mary and Joseph bring Jesus there. And the Song of Simeon goes on where he talks about with glory and derision, these tensions. Eliot, again and again, his poetry, his philosophy, he lives in this tension between the best and that which contradicts the best, the tragedies, the sufferings of life. And Songs of Simeon is very, very much a poetry which embodies these tensions, where he talks about, not for me the martyrdom, the ecstasy of thought and prayer, not for me the ultimate vision, but just grant me your peace. Now we're going from us to me, and he's asking that in the midst not only of his future, because he's at 80 now, he knows his journey is almost done, he's soon to cross the river, but grant me your peace in the midst of where I am going, and I know not where I am going. And he says, I am tired of my own life and the lives after me. And again, let thy servant depart, having seen thy salvation. So he's seen in the Christ child in the temple, he's seen his short journey coming to an end, but he also is acutely aware that those who come after him, his children and children's children, are going to enter into a very painful and difficult phase. And Eliot, in the second of the Ariel poems, again, is what's the nature of Ariel being freed from the tree, but what does that sort of freedom look like when one enters freedom from something, but freedom entering into something which on the one hand has immense possibility, but its opposite is that which would undercut the possibilities of embodying the vision.